and we'll get into this when we talk about artificial sweeteners. This is the idea in mind. I think I adopted, perhaps falsely, that you eat something that's sweet or that tastes really good, and you are suddenly on the train of wanting to eat more. Yeah. And I could imagine how exercise, if it is increasing the satiety signals, could be working in a number of different ways.
Yeah, I think I think the effect is probably mostly at the brain level. The effects on blood sugar. The research out there is not very compelling for blood sugar driving appetite. Now, if you become hypoglycemic, yes, you'll get hungry, but it's a different kind of hunger than like your normal, like I feel kind of empty and my stomach's growling. Like they can go together, but usually like the hypoglycemia is like, I am hot, I feel like I'm going to pass out. Like you want to eat something not because your stomach's growling, but because you know that you just need some fuel.
It's like you're getting pulled under.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I've been there when I've done longer fasts, something I don't do anymore, and drank a lot of black coffee. There was probably an electrolyte effect there because coffee has you excrete sodium and other electrolytes. Yeah. And then just feeling like I needed something, this whole thing, like I need something, this kind of desperation. I never want to be back here again. Hypoglycemia is very uncomfortable.
It's not fun. So, again, when they look at, actual randomized control trials of implementing some exercise where they're, pretty controlled environment, they typically see people, if anything, they eat less as opposed to eating more. Now, some people, again, that's, studies report averages, right? And there's individual data points. So there are some people who at least anecdotally report that exercise makes them more hungry. That's completely valid. It could be their beliefs around it. It could be a number of different things, but it's important to understand that there is individual variability. And I think one of the things that I've learned to appreciate more is not trying to separate psychology and physiology. We do this a lot. And so, I want to know the physiology. I don't care about the psychology of it. And now I'm kind of appreciating more psychology is physiology. That like with most things now we have kind of the biopsychosocial model. And I'll give you an example of this. A lot of people get really caught up with appetite. And if we could just suppress people's appetite, that's part of it. But people don't just eat because they're hungry. They eat for a lot of different reasons. Social reasons, especially. So can you remember the last social event you ever went to that didn't have food?
No.
Right. If you look at dinner plates from the 1800s, they're about this big. Now how big are dinner plates?
The whole buffet.
Right? Right.
Yeah.
There's situational cues, right? You're sitting down to watch TV. Oh, grab some popcorn, grab some, snack, whatever.
I even see this with it, how one person will pick up their phone and then everyone picks up their phone. I think there's a similar effect with food.
Yeah. And same thing, right? Like how many times have we either done it ourselves or been experienced people saying, oh, you should have some, or like, alcohol especially, right? Like people will, I was hanging out with somebody last night and I had a beer and they just had, a water. And I'm like, I feel no need to try and convince them to do that with me. You know what I mean? But as humans, we're kind of herd animals. Like we don't want to be doing something out in isolation on our own. Now this is a very tenuous, I guess, belief of mine, but, doing things alone in isolation, during kind of, ancestral times, that's going to set off your alarm system, because if you don't have other people, you can't protect yourself, right? So typically things were done together in groups. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we tend to be just tribal in nature about a lot of things, right? So the whole point to that is, on the list of reasons why people eat, I've gotten to the point where I think that hunger is actually not even the main reason people eat. Stress, lack of sleep. Boredom.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So unless, we can do something that addresses all those things, there's a line from a review paper. This review paper came out in 2011. It's by a researcher named McLean, and it's the best review paper I've ever read. It was called Biology's Response to Dieting, the Impetus for Weight Regain, and basically went through all the mechanisms of these adaptations that happen during fat loss diets and how biology's response is to try to drive you back to your previous. And I'm going to butcher the quote, but at the end of the study, he said, basically, the body's systems are comprehensive, redundant, and well-focused on restoring depleted energy reserves. And any attempt or any kind of strategy for weight loss that doesn't attempt to address a broad spectrum of these things is going to fail. And so that's why when people say, well, just do low carb, you won't be hungry. I'm like, yeah, but people don't just eat because they're hungry. So I think really like trying to get outside the box and think about these things. And especially when you read some of the literature, I recently read a systematic review of successful weight loss maintainers, which I thought was really interesting. So they took people who had lost a significant amount of body weight and kept it off for I think it was 3 years. And they basically asked them questions and tried to identify commonalities. And there were some things that I expected, like cognitive restraint, self-monitoring, exercise. And then one of the things they said that I found really fascinating was pretty ubiquitous between people. They said, I had to develop a new identity. So are you familiar with Ethan Suplee?
No.
So Ethan is an actor. He's been in like Remember the Titans and American History X.
I certainly saw American History X.
Yeah. So he was very large. Like he was like 550 pounds. And now he's like 230 and jacked.
Wait, he was how much?
550 pounds.
Wow.
And he has it whenever he puts up posts on his Instagram of him training, it'll say, I killed my clone today. And I asked him, like, is this what you're talking about?